It was close to midnight when the neighborhood fell completely silent. The kind of silence where even the hum of the streetlights seemed too loud. Inside the small two-story house, Emma sat by her desk, her laptop screen glowing in the dimly lit room. She was trying to finish an assignment for work, but her concentration kept breaking. Every few minutes, she had that strange sensation, the feeling of being watched. She brushed it off at first, convincing herself it was nothing more than late-night nerves, but deep down, she couldn't shake the weight of unease pressing against her chest. Her desk was by the window, the curtains drawn halfway, out of habit. She glanced at the glass. At first she saw nothing, only her faint reflection, looking back at her, but then for the briefest second, she thought she saw movement, a figure, a shadow. She leaned closer, squinting into the night, but the street looked empty. The tall oak tree swayed slightly in the breeze, its branches moving like fingers. Shaking her head, she whispered, "Get a grip, Emma." But then came the knock, soft, almost like a fingertip tapping against glass. She froze, her eyes darting back to the window. Her heart began to hammer inside her chest. She swallowed hard, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was the tree branch. Maybe she had just imagined it. Slowly she got up and reached for the curtain, her fingers trembling as she pulled it shut. She told herself it was nothing, turned off the desk lamp, and moved to the couch in the living room, trying to distract herself with her phone. Minutes ticked by. She was scrolling through messages when the sound came again. This time, not at the window, but at the front porch. A slow, deliberate creak of wood. Under pressure, her blood ran cold. Someone was outside. She turned her phone's flashlight toward the door, but the peephole showed only darkness. No one there. She pressed her ear against the door, straining to hear. For a moment, silence, and then breathing, slow, heavy breathing on the other side. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She stumbled backward, almost dropping her phone. She wanted to call the police, but when she unlocked her phone, the screen froze, refusing to load. The battery percentage dropped rapidly before her eyes. 30%, 10%, then it died. She stared at it in disbelief. She had charged it just an hour ago. The timing was too perfect. Too wrong. She grabbed the landline phone on the kitchen counter, dead. No dial tone. Panic clawed at her chest. She whispered to herself, "No, this can't be real." That's when she saw it, through the sliver of space in the curtain. She hadn't fully closed. She caught a glimpse of something, a figure standing just beyond the front yard. Still, watching, not moving an inch, not making a sound. She blinked hard, thinking maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her, but no, the figure was there. She couldn't see details, just the outline, tall, broad shoulders, motionless, like a shadow, glued to the night. Emma's breath came faster, each inhale sharp and shallow. She backed away from the window, heart pounding so loud, she swore the entire neighborhood could hear it. She wanted to scream, but the words stuck in her throat. Suddenly, a loud thud shook the house. It came from the back door, as if someone slammed their fist against it. Emma spun around, every nerve in her body on fire. Then came another thud, this time from the side of the house. Whoever it was, there was more than one. Her knees weakened. The house, once her safe haven, now felt like a trap. The lights flickered, once, twice. Then darkness swallowed the room. Emma stood frozen, the weight of dread pressing down on her. As every shadow seemed alive, she dared to whisper into the dark, her voice trembling. "Who's out there?" No answer came, just silence, until she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps crunching on gravel, circling the house slowly, deliberately. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her body wouldn't move. Something primal inside told her the second she moved, the second she made a sound, they would know exactly where she was. She tried to steady her breathing, clutching the edge of the couch to keep herself upright. She told herself she was imagining things, that this couldn't be happening. But then faintly, cutting through the silence like a whisper directly in her ear, she heard it. A voice, low, male, right outside the window. "I know you're in there." Emma's legs buckled, and she dropped down behind the couch, covering her mouth with both hands to silence the sob that almost escaped her throat. Her entire body trembled as she pressed herself against the floor, her ears straining for every sound. The voice had been so close, as if the man had been leaning against the glass whispering straight into her skin. Her heart pounded hard enough. She was sure it could be heard outside. The footsteps resumed, circling, steady and deliberate. She crawled across the carpet, toward the hallway, careful to keep her movements silent, though every creak of the floor sounded deafening to her ears. She reached the staircase and glanced up. Darkness. The power hadn't come back. She hesitated, torn between hiding upstairs or making a run for the back door. But before she could decide, something rattled violently. The doorknob at the back of the house twisted, jerked, and shook, as if someone were testing. Emma slapped her hand over her mouth again, biting her lips so hard she tasted blood. The knob stopped. Silence pressed down again, thicker than before. That was almost worse than the noise. She whispered to herself, "Think, think, think." She remembered her neighbor, Miss Callahan, an older woman who lived just across the street. If Emma could make it out the front door and sprint across the road, maybe she'd be safe. Summoning what little courage she had, Emma tiptoed to the door, every muscle in her body shaking with adrenaline. She slowly unlocked the deadbolt, praying it wouldn't echo in the silence. She took a deep breath, hand trembling on the handle, and pulled the door open just an inch. The night air rushed in cold against her skin. At first, she saw nothing, just the dark lawn and quiet street. But then, at the far end of her yard, under the street lamp, she saw him, the figure. He was standing perfectly still, face obscured by shadow, staring straight at her door. She froze in place, unable to breathe, his head tilted slightly, the way a predator studies its prey. Emma slammed the door shut, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Why me? Why here?" She backed away, but a loud metallic scraping sound echoed through the night. It wasn't coming from outside. It was from the upstairs hallway. Her blood turned to ice. She had been downstairs the whole time, listening to the figure outside. But now, someone was inside. The floorboards creaked above her, slow and heavy, like boots pressing into the wood. Emma's vision blurred as she tried to process the impossible. Had he already gotten in, or was there more than one? She pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay hidden in the shadows. The sound of footsteps upstairs grew louder, pacing back and forth, deliberate and patient. She thought of running, but her body wouldn't move, locked in place by sheer terror. Suddenly, her phone lit up on the couch. Dead moments ago, it now glowed, screen cracked with static and strange interference. A notification appeared on the screen though she hadn't touched it. Message received. Don't look outside. Her lips trembled as she mouthed the words in disbelief. Who had sent it? Her phone had no service. Another notification flashed across the screen before she could think. He's not alone. Emma dropped the phone as if it had burned her, her pulse thundering in her ears. She stumbled backward, and the floor creaked beneath her feet. Immediately, the footsteps upstairs stopped. Then, after a beat, they started moving again, faster now, heavier, heading directly toward the staircase. Emma bolted, sprinting into the kitchen, fumbling with the drawer, where she kept a kitchen knife. Her hands were slick with sweat, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She yanked one out, gripping it so tightly her knuckles went white. The stairs groaned. 1 step, 2 steps. Whoever was up there was coming down. Emma crouched low, knife in hand, heart slamming against her ribs. The air felt thick, every shadow alive, every second stretching into eternity. She prayed she was imagining it all, that this was some twisted dream she'd wake up from.
but the heavy steps grew closer, until they stopped just beyond the kitchen wall. Emma's trembling fingers tightened around the knife. The silence was suffocating. She tried to listen for breathing, movement, anything, but there was nothing. Just the kind of stillness that makes you wonder if something is standing right behind you. She forced herself to peek around the corner, the knife raised, and there was no one. The stairs were empty. The hallway was still. Emma staggered back, chest heaving, her body shaking with confusion. She knew she'd heard someone. She knew. Then from the window behind her came a sharp, deliberate knock. 3 slow taps. She spun around, the knife slipping from her hand and clattering to the floor, and through the glass, inches from her face, a pale hand pressed against the window. Emma stumbled backward, tripping over the rug, and crashing onto the floor. The pale hand stayed pressed against the window, fingers long and bony, sliding slowly across the glass as if it was searching for a way inside. Her chest tightened with panic. She scrambled to her feet, heart racing, and grabbed the knife again, though she knew it wouldn't matter. Whoever, whatever it wasn't afraid of her. The hand vanished. As suddenly as it appeared, she stood frozen, waiting, trembling with every passing second. Then came the sound of whispering, not outside but inside. It floated through the air, hushed voices overlapping in a language she couldn't understand. Emma spun in circles, trying to find the source, but it felt like it was everywhere, seeping from the walls, from the floor, from the very air itself. Her breathing grew ragged, as the whispers grew louder, more urgent, until they were almost screaming. She dropped to her knees, covering her ears, begging them to stop. Then silence. Dead silence. She lifted her head slowly, shaking, her ears ringing from the sudden quiet. That's when she noticed the front door was wide open. Her blood turned cold. She hadn't touched it. She hadn't even gone near it. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs felt like stone. She forced herself up and stumbled toward the door, knife still clutched tight. The night outside looked darker than before, the street lamp flickering weakly, shadows stretching unnaturally across the yard. And there they were, not one figure, not 2, but at least half a dozen shapes standing silently in her yard, evenly spaced, all facing her house. Their faces were hidden, but their heads tilted in unison, like a grotesque imitation of curiosity. Emma's breath caught in her throat, as her vision blurred with tears. She wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but she couldn't. Her phone lit up again on the floor behind her. Another message. Don't go outside. Her pulse hammered. She looked from the phone to the figures in the yard. If she stayed inside, she wasn't safe. If she went outside, she wasn't safe. She was trapped. One of the figures took a step forward, then another. The rest followed, slowly closing the distance. Emma staggered backward, slamming the door shut, and locking it with trembling hands. She ran upstairs, heart beating like a drum, knife slick with sweat in her grip. She dove into her bedroom and shoved the dresser in front of the door, her body shaking uncontrollably. The house creaked around her as footsteps circled below, moving from door to door, window to window. A tap came at the glass near her bed. She forced herself not to look, though every instinct screamed at her to The whispers returned, louder now, layered voices that filled the room. Like a storm, she pressed her hands over her ears, sobbing. Then silence again. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, though she hadn't brought it upstairs. She hesitated, then picked it up with trembling fingers. The screen glowed with one final message. Look behind you. Her breath froze, every muscle in her body locked. She didn't want to turn. She didn't want to see, but something compelled her, like invisible hands forcing her head. Slowly she turned toward the dark corner of her room. A man stood there, tall, face pale, eyes black, smiling faintly. His voice was the same whisper she'd heard outside her window. I told you, I knew you were in here. The lights flickered once, then died completely. When the neighbors came the next morning, the house was empty. The doors were unlocked, the windows wide open, but Emma was gone. No sign of forced entry, no footprints, nothing. Only her phone lay on the floor by the couch. On the screen was a single unsent draft message. Someone's outside.